Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Before we start, I would like to share a few housekeeping items with you. All the participants will be on mute. That doesn't mean we do not want to hear from you. Please feel free to post your question in Q&A window. Our speaker will answer all the questions at the end of the session. If you are experiencing any issues with the webinar platform, please let us know in the chat box. So that is it from me. It is my pleasure now to introduce you to our speaker, Bill Manning, who will be our webinar presenter for today. Bill, all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to take you on an exciting journey for something that you've recently signed up for, which is our free tier. Now, when we say free, the idea behind it is that you are getting in some ways, a slightly limited version in terms of storage and usage, but you're actually getting our full enterprise, basically grade platform for free. It's a good place to learn, experience if you're new to Artifactory, or you're looking to experiment, or you're a startup just getting ready into the world and building your software platform, and you want to start by having a binary manager as one of the cornerstones, basically the foundation of what you're doing. This is a great place to start. So let's go ahead and let's just kick this off since we have a short limited amount of time. I'm William Manning. I'm actually one of the solution architects. You can call me Bill. If you can follow me on Twitter at William Manning. And today we're going to be talking about the basics of what is Artifactory in the platform, understanding the basics, like what is an artifact, what is a repository, how to use promotion, how to design the system to work for you, and also about build integration, because that's a key essential part. Today's modern DevSecOps world, CI/CD is one of the key features of what keeps organizations going. We're also going to give you some resources like our Academy, and on top of that, also to our resources page, our wiki page. And then if we have time, we'll answer any questions at the end, but most likely we might not have time for that because it is a short period of time. So a little bit about what we are and our philosophy behind everything is that we believe that binary management is a good foundation for every corporation, every software development team, from everything from independent developers all the way up to full level corporations. DevSecOps, it should not be just DevOps, it should be DevSecOps. The idea of actually integrating security into everything you do. This includes things like vulnerability and any sort of security threats, and on top of that, things like license and compliance. We built our solution to be used by any way needed by the customer. So we have full hybrid. You can use our SaaS. You can host it yourself. You can use it on premise. It's actually a very diverse situation in which you can kind of actually have all our solution implemented wherever you need it. And in this case, you'll be using our free tier, and we're going to kind of dive into that. But we do have other options available, like I said, from everything from independent means all the way up to full-scale escalation platforms that are something that can be used for large organizations. We have a universal mentality, and the universal mentality also comes down to our ecosystem and what we integrate with, right? So all the major CI and CD tooling, it's built to be used where you need it. Like I said, it's a good foundation. It's built to scale. It's also built to scale as you need to scale. So in other words, if you're starting off with 2 guys in the garage all the way up to thousands of employees, we have a solution for you. And it really truly is an end-to-end solution, from developer to deployment, from code to cloud, for when we work with like the US military, from compile to combat. The ideas behind it is being able to have a way to manage what you do in the way that works for you, but have it flexible enough, but also at the same time adhere to standards. So this way you can have a basically a modern day DevSec ops organization, a machine that's just focused on producing the best software possible while having security, having safety, having accountability as all part of it. And we bring, order to everything, right? There's multitudes of different technologies out there. And we've actually built the policy engines, and, we've built the way to secure the binaries and store the binaries and have accountability, build in your automation, use our automation. But the whole thing is to have that centralized experience where you can have all of these in one location. Like I said, a solid foundation. And if I were to explain what we do in one simple term, it's consistency. The idea of consistency is something that you want to bring into any sort of DevSecOps organization that you have. Ensuring that the developers are developing with the same binaries, those third-party transitive dependencies that you're used, because 80 to 90% of your software is someone else's software. But in addition to that, when you pass this off to your automation platforms, they're using the same set. And then on top of that, one of the things we'll be discussing today is repository design. So ensuring that when you produce a build, that if you follow like modern day DevOps practices, things like 12-factor methodologies or multi-tier or any other, multitude of different DevSecOps techniques out there in the world, there's one thing that with them that's apparent with all of it, which is the atomic unit. The same things that you're building in development should be the same thing your QA team is testing, should be the same thing that you're in staging, and should be the same thing in production. Once again, consistency. And since we are universal in nature, we have over 27 package types in which you can go do this, everything from NPM to C and C++ to even things like web services with like Helm charts and Docker containers. And having the accountability from end to end is really one of the paramount features of what we do. And I said we have a full platform. Now, today we're really concentrating on Artifactory. It's the cornerstone of our company and the cornerstone of the entire technology stack. But if you were to explore further into this and you decide that after using the free tier, there's a lot more things that you would like to do, one of the key factors here is we have a platform for that. And it goes from, developer to device, code to cloud, developer to deploy, all those things. And so we have Artifactory first, right? The Universal Binary Repository Manager. This is where you store those transitive dependencies for all the things you build. This is where you can actually publish your build information and promote it through its own SDLC cycle for accountability. To the right of that, we have X-Ray. This is security, compliance, and vulnerability scanning. This makes sure that those third-party transitive dependencies are safe and secure when you're doing this. That you make sure that when you're bringing something in, you're not going to introduce something that can potentially threaten. Come on, we all know what happened last year with SolarWinds, and that was actually based on a transitive dependency that was actually pulled in. And the best part was it wasn't even a direct dependency; it was actually an indirect dependency to the stack that snuck its way in, and infected over 18,000 corporations. To the right of that, we have distribution and edge. This is kind of like a roll your own CDN. So the edge nodes are lightweight immutable versions of Artifactory, and the distribution hub allows you to package up these releases, take them, push them down to the edge where they need to be. They can also be used as edge level cache. And this year, we actually will have a webinar coming up very soon about it. We actually are releasing a thing called a PDN. It's a private distribution network. And the idea of it is that it's a quick, easy, format for peer-to-peering in large-scale organizations that are looking to deploy into, say, web services, say into, iron or multiple locations or IoT devices, but do it safely, securely, and have accountability behind it. Below that, we have pipelines. This is our CI/CD and CI orchestration tool. It's highly scalable. It's built in Kubernetes. It's templatized. It has accountability with signed pipelines, meaning that you can actually, if you have a regulated corporation, you can go ahead and attribute to all the things that you need to do in signed stages. At the top of this, we have mission control and insight. This is a way to keep an eye on your organization structure. So in other words, how is the system operating? So all the components of our platform are easily accessible. And then using our insight component, it provides statistics to see how you're doing overall in terms of velocity. How are you doing in terms of security? It's a nice way for you to go in and have all this metrics so you can see how you can improve your organization over time. Now, let's talk about where Artifactory comes in and ways that you can utilize the free tier that you just signed up for. So let's go look at a typical development workflow. I'm a developer. I produce software. In this case, maybe I'm producing an NPM front end for something, right? And when I build this software, I have to go in and I create a package.json file which defines the dependencies that I need to produce the software I'm trying to build. And in a normal case, I would put these dependencies into my package.json. I would type npm install. It goes out to the npm registry. It pulls in those third-party transitive dependencies, and I'm working. Now, this is great on a single developer level, but at the same time, what if I have more than one developer, right? How do I ensure that, that Joe and Ankush are all using the same set of binaries that might be utilized? Well, this is where Artifactory comes in and the consistency of what we provide. Because now let's go ahead and look at that same workflow and let's go put Artifactory into the mix. What does the Artifactory component do, right? So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how to store the binaries. What does that exactly mean and how you can actually set up this to match your SDLC going forward. But let's first talk about how Artifactory operates. Now, Artifactory, when it stores a binary, just so you're aware, we store this binary as a unique SHA-256 checksum inside of Artifactory. Meaning that for every binary that comes in, we tear it apart, we look at it, we examine it, we calculate this checksum, we store the physical binary as this checksum, and then we reference it via metadata in our database. This means that we never duplicate binaries. Instead, we create additional metadata reference pointers. Well, what's great is that you can have 1,000 projects all using the same binary. We store it once, and then we have 1,000 references to that binary in the metadata. But then you can add additional metadata to make the context more unique to the usage of the situation. So saying that, let's talk about how we organize them. And the way we organize these binaries, well, either where we store them or the way we actually use them as third-party transitive dependencies is through repositories. So the first thing we're going to talk about is remote repositories. It's actually more like 90 to 95% of the software you build is someone else's, those third-party transitive dependencies. So in Artifactory, we'll create a thing called a remote repository. A remote repository is a request-based lazy proxy. So it means that when you go in and you request those actual third-party transitive dependencies that you define in your package.json, they will come through Artifactory and then be delivered to the developer. This means that you have 1,000 developers and you've defined this to all use Artifactory for this. It means that when you do this, that all those developers will go ahead and pull the same set of binaries. So when developer 0 pulls down a library, all 999 other developers will pull the same binary because it's all stored inside of Artifactory. Here's that concept again of the idea of consistency. But when we produce a build and we produce the software that we wish to do, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to publish this information into a thing called the local repository. The local repository are the binaries that matter to you. These are your binaries, your builds, your files, anything you upload. Knowing that, though, one of the cool things that you can do is we have a promotion API. I mentioned before the idea of consistency. So you can take a build, publish it into a development repository, create a staging, a QA, and a production, and you can promote the binary through the cycle, meaning that you can have accountability for every phase of something that you produce. So when you go ahead and if you have to do a root cause analysis or you have auditability, anything around that, this gives you the option of actually going in and publishing that information and having it so that you know every stage of a piece of software as it's gone through the cycle. Now, of course, you're not going to want to go in and have a bunch of repositories that you have to define and utilize. So we actually have the concept of a virtual repository. A virtual repository is an encapsulation, and you'll be interfacing actually with the virtual repository because under it, it will have your remote repository. It will have your local repository. And then all you have to simply do is update your configuration, and all the tools just work the same, just so you know. So in other words, you can npm install just works. If you're using Docker, Docker push pull tag just works. If you're using things like Python, pip install just works. There is no differentiator. We have taken the time and effort to go ahead and have it so no matter what you're used to as a tool and you put Artifactory into the mix, you don't have to change other than the configuration. So in this case, you can see I'm actually updating the publish conf inside of my package.json to say that, hey, any resolution that I do or any publishing I do, I want to use Artifactory for this. So if I do an npm install, or we have a JFROG CLI tool and I do a JFROG RT npm install, it will actually proxy that request through Artifactory to the remote sources, pull those through the remote repository and deliver them to the actual developer, or whether it's a CI tool or the developer themselves. This is how easy it is. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So once again, just so you're aware, so when I'm talking about repositories, local repositories are the binaries that matter to you. These are your builds. These are the things you produce. These are the things you upload. Remote repositories, those third-party transitive dependencies. They can also be repositories from other teams. There's a lot of things you can do, but they're basically the stuff you depend on to do the job that you do. And to the right of that, we have virtual repositories, which is the encapsulation. Now remember, you can also design your repositories to match your flow. And by the way, we actually have a document called Naming Conventions that I helped write. The idea behind Naming Conventions document is best naming practices for conventions for your repositories, so that you know what you're working with. So in my case, I've got dev, QA, staging, release, and I can promote my binaries through the cycle to ensure that I actually know where my builds are in their cycle. So let's just go to a quick demo. Like I said, since we only have 30 minutes, I want to be able to show you what we have. So first of all, here is my instance. And when you first log into your instance of your free tier, you're presented with a quick setup guide. Of course, by the way, too, we also have other examples over here for security and compliance, and also to how to use Artifactory. But once again, what you're going to do is you're going to go in here and you can select one of the technologies that you want. Now, you can say right here that I want to go create an npm repo, and this will actually create some examples for you. Now, by the way, when it creates the examples, it will go ahead and set it up so you have a local, a remote, and a virtual. So let's go do this now. Let's go hit set me up. And when I do set me up, you could actually see with these examples we've already have in place that if you wanted to try and test using this, if you want to start immediately, all you have to do is say npm set config. This will actually set it. And if you want to have it with your password enabled, you can go in here and unlock it. And this will actually go ahead and put the credentials in. So this way you can start utilizing this. If you look below, you can see where it's actually applied already for my npm rc. It's actually already applied the information. And all I have to do is copy it into my npm rc, and I'm in business. Now, once you've done that, you can actually go ahead and if you can actually add this to your publish conf. So npm publish will just work. And if you want to resolve it, just npm install just happens to work. And you can even use things like scoped packages. This is also the same thing if you're using something like Maven. One of the coolest features of this is that when you go in, we actually will generate the POM file for you. And if you put the credentials in, right? So if I type my password in and I hit unlock, this will actually go ahead and fill in all the information that I need here to ensure that I can use it immediately. Now, once you've done this and once you set this up, you have some areas you're going to want to keep an eye out. So of course you have the artifact browser. This will show you exactly what artifacts are located in any of the repositories that you created. You have the build browser. The build browser will show you what a build looks like. And speaking of build, I'm actually going to jump into another instance that I have here that I'm going to log in with, and I'm going to show you what you should be able to get out of any sort of build that you create. I'm even going to show you in this case one of the more complicated examples. And what it is that if you set up everything, and we have all the instructions on how to set this up on our wiki, and I'm going to share those resources with you. But what do you get? What do you get by using us as for your, for all the things that you do? Well, let's take maybe a Docker example in this case. Well, first of all, we have integrations. Now, this Docker example that I'm presenting to you right now, if you look at it, you can see where I've got a build ID, right? This is the ID. This is the build that actually created it. Here's the actual, in this case, I used a Jenkins server. And if I click in here, this will actually bring me to the Jenkins server to show you how I built this. So first of all, I'm cloning my GitHub repo. I'm pulling my dependencies out of Artifactory. I'm going to build and deploy it. I'm going to do some unit testing. I'm going to use our X-ray product to scan it, and I can use the promotion API. Now, if I were to show you what that looks like in its raw format, I have that right here. So Artifactory is a plugin for Jenkins and Artifactory. If you install this plugin, you could set some parameters like the Artifactory URL. You could set some credentials so you can, send this information. Then I'm going to collect all the build information on what I'm producing. In this way, the Docker image. If you look here, I'm actually going to use our download spec, right? So I've got an npm download. I'm actually querying Artifactory using our AQL language to say, get me the latest version of the application I'm going to host inside. I'm going to download the actual dependencies I have. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to, build the actual Docker image using the standard Docker protocol. I'm actually going to push it into Artifactory. I'm going to publish all the information I know about it into Artifactory. I have a unit test right here. And this unit test, all it's letting me do is it just says, does this Docker app run? I've got a really ridiculous kind of 200 OK curl command that I run against the image to say, oh, it's functional. But I'm going to update a property. Remember that metadata I talked about, right? I'm able to publish more metadata. So if this passes my functional test, I'm actually going to go ahead and say QA functional testing will pass. Or if it failed, I'm going to push failed. I can go ahead and make sure that this actual Docker image is safe and secure. So I'm actually going to scan this image and say, hey, does it contain anything nefarious? Now, this one is terrible. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to lie. My Docker image is terrible on purpose, but I'm not going to fail it. In this case, I just want the results. Then here's the promotion API. It's as simple as that. I can go in and say, here's my source repository, say in this case, staging, and I want to push it to production. I can go from one repo to the next. I can add comments to it. I can add additional metadata to make everything more relevant. But once again, this allows me to go in and see how my actual software is progressing over time. And if I were to look at the results of this, this is the important part. I can go in here and show you that it was released. So in the API I did for, in this case, for my job, I said it's released. So that's letting you know that I actually published this and I promoted it into a release state. But when I go in here, oops, there we go. Let's see what you get. So first of all, I get all the things here that I have, in terms of like my typical layers of a Docker image. Not important, right? But what if I could tell you exactly what version of the application is being hosted in this Docker image? And what if there's a problem? Maybe build number 76 is acting terrible in our production environment, and build 69 was actually our previous version that was working wonderful. Wouldn't you like to be able to know the difference? Well, here you go. My Java backend stayed the same, but my Node frontend changed. Immediately, within seconds, I had a deviation between my two versions that lets me know that there's something distinctly different between them. I can see all the environmental and system information on how it was produced. With our X-ray data, I can see all the violations that are actually part of this. Now, I can tell you, 1,310 violations. It's terrible. If you're using our X-ray product too, I can actually even show you security issues. So if I click in any of these, I can show you not only if there's an issue, but also is there a way to fix it? We actually provide remediation. And we give you all the level of detail on what this is. And this is actually even funnier, is something that is actually a root, in this case, a core actual dependency for the container. This is a runtime dependency. It's a Debian image. We have other ones too, where I can even show you, just to show you how deep we go into this. If I click on here, you get that same information, the same remediation, but check this out. We found this jar in a jar of a layer of an image of a build. If you have compliance issues, you can go in and look and see all the, the licensing of every piece of component of software you have as part of this build. You can even see the descendants. You actually can those Docker obfuscated layers that are a mystery to you because you only know them as these. Well, if you take a look with our product, you can actually see the contents of every layer of a Docker image you've produced. And this is not just for Docker and other things like that, but you can also, if you have compliance, you can even export all this information as a violation report, a licensing report, a security report. You can hook this up to your Jira system, so you can actually collect all the Jira tickets that are part of this. You could do a diff even at a complete build level, everything from the artifacts that have changed, the dependencies that have changed, the environmental system information that's changed. And here's that release history. You could have every phase of your SDLC all here in one location so that you can actually go ahead and see, where it is in terms of those stages. But let's not stop there. Let's go ahead and let's go take a look really quick. Because also, this comes along back to that NPM example. Well, here's another NPM example that I created. My, step 2, this is actually the app I was hosting. Let's go take a look. Well, first of all, here's my tar GZ, right? This is the publish end result. But the best part is I can go, hey, here's all 478 transitive dependencies that I have with this. And I can compare with any build I want to see if anything's changed. Environmental and system also on this. And then here's that Jira information once again. And what's cool is that with any of this, you also understand how things are interconnected. And this is the thing a lot of people actually, and a lot of organizations lack, is visibility into actual binary usage from a root cause analysis, from an auditability perspective. And one of the things I want to show you is that once you're using Artifactory for those transit dependencies, once you're using Artifactory for your Docker images, and you follow all our best practices, and I click in here, I could show you how many versions of a library there are, how many times something has been downloaded, if it's actually compromised. And what's cool is I can go in here and show you how to use it. I can also show you every place it's being utilized. So the traceability factor is incredible. I can also show you any of the X-ray data behind it. Has this been distributed out to something? But also, I can go trace this in. And one of the things I want to show you is that when I trace this in, what's awesome is that I can even get more granular than what I just showed you. Here's all the raw information about that metadata we're storing. Here's the NPM raw information. And I can show you not only the transit dependency, which happens to be this one, I can show you all the indirect dependencies in here. And what's great is if you're combating things like typo squatting and spoofing or anything like that, this is a great way to see if anything has changed. So like this version of 7.4.4, if I look here, I can actually go and show you that I went to 7.9.0. I actually have a new third-party transitive dependency, a new indirect dependency, a variance, a deviation. I can even show you all the properties and how I can add more additional metadata, and I could query on that. So like I've got one here that says review later equals true, and I'll show you, I'll use that in a second. But I can also show you, once again, where is this being utilized? And if I want to, like I said, if I want to say I want to look up any sort of binary I have, I can go look at a binary based on any property. I say true, and I do a search, this will return all the things that I flagged with metadata. Now, the thing is too, is that when you are using Artifactory and you are using our platform in the future, you have all this power with you right here. You have all that information. We've made it easy to set up. You can set up raw formats. We walked you through on how to build binaries. But if you want further information, we have a bunch of free resources for you. So we have the JFROG Academy. And now the JFROG Academy is a self-paced course, everything from Artifactory overview to X-ray security, how to use our pipelines, everything from developers to administrators to DevOps engineers. It's a full course that you can take in your own pace and qualify yourself and put this on your resume as being, I know how to use JFrog Artifactory. We have over 7,000 customers, 75% of the Fortune 100. We touch a lot of companies, and this will only enhance the ability for you to actually use this on your resume to get a job. It's a demand in the world, especially now with the idea from the software bill of materials, which if you're new to DevOps or if you're old to DevOps, whatever, like me, then you're going to understand that the software bill of materials is an essential thing. And all that build input I showed you is a software bill of materials, so you can actually go and press your organization and say, hey, we have to meet this regulation. We already got it because it came with Artifactory. We also have our JFrog, actually our wiki, right? This has everything you ever wanted to know on how to utilize our platform. You can also use our resource page. We have lots of awesome information on here that we have available on our JFrog website. We have our JFrog YouTube channel with tons of information, tons of conferences, live forums. We have a lot of information here for you. And on top of that, we also have the ability for you to go in and upgrade at any time. You just have to contact our representatives. But what you started with here is the building blocks. This is the beginning. This is where you can begin to go down the modern DevOps journey. And I just touched on some of the features here. We have a lot of webinars out there. We're doing more and more all the time. We're very influential in the community. So if there's any time and place, this is the time and place to learn how to use Artifactory as we expand, because it will only help you and help your organization come to grips with the fact that DevSecOps is here, number one. Number two, accountability is there. And also, when you have security involved, like with our X-ray product, nobody wants to be that company that says X company released 70 million records of their users due to a breach in a transitive dependency that was uploaded. Go look at SolarWinds, right? Huge deal. Anyway, I'm Bill Manning. I hope you enjoyed today. This was a quick overview. It was a very limited amount of time. There'll be more webinars and stuff like this in the future. But I want to let you know, welcome to the world of DevSecOps, and welcome to the platform that's going to help you get to that Mecca. And have a wonderful day, everybody, and be safe.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. So this concludes the webinar for today. Thank you all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. So until next time, please take care, stay safe. Goodbye.